Hello and welcome. You're welcome to comment your city and the time below. I always enjoy reading them. If you find these stories interesting, please consider subscribing. Let's start tonight's story. I took the night shift at the county morgue because it paid $3 more an hour than my last job, and because I needed something steady, something predictable. The kind of work where you clock in, follow procedures, and clock out without drama. It wasn't glamorous. Filing intake paperwork, cleaning equipment, assisting the on-call mortuary tech when needed, and keeping the building locked down until the morning shift arrived. But it was honest work. Real work. The kind that doesn't ask questions about gaps in your resume or why you're willing to work alone with the dead. The morgue sits attached to the eastern wing of the county administration building, a squat concrete structure that empties out completely after 5 o'clock. During the day, there's the hum of bureaucracy. Clerks, social workers, health inspectors moving through hallways that smell like burnt coffee and copier toner. At night, all of that drains away. The halls become too clean, like scrubbed not just the floors, but the air itself. The fluorescent lights buzz in a frequency that sits just below hearing, more a pressure than a sound. The ventilation system breathes in slow, deliberate cycles, pushing recycled air through ducts that tick and settle like something stretching after a long sleep. I expected the hardest part of the job would be my own nerves. The smell, formaldehyde and industrial cleaner and something else. Something organic that no amount of ventilation ever quite erases. The silence was broken only by the hum of refrigeration units. The idea of being alone with bodies surrounded by the weight of ended lives. I expected all of that to bother me. I told myself I'd get used to it. My supervisor for the night shift was a man named Gerald, an older mortuary tech with 23 years in the field. He had the kind of calm professionalism that comes from seeing everything and refusing to be impressed by any of it. Thin-framed glasses, neat gray hair, soft voice. The type of person who would tell you about an autopsy complication the same way someone else might describe a problematic spreadsheet. He walked me through the intake area, the cold storage rooms, the equipment cleaning protocols, and the emergency contact procedures with the patience of a man who had done this orientation 100 times before. Before he left for the night, he worked until midnight, training me on the handoff. He retrieved a clipboard from a locked drawer in the supervisor's office. Attached to it was a laminated sheet, slightly yellowed at the edges, titled in plain block letters, "Night Rules for the Cold Rooms." He set it on the desk in front of me without ceremony. "Read these," he said. "Follow them exactly." I picked up the clipboard, expecting the usual workplace safety guidelines, proper PPE usage, biohazard disposal, emergency exit routes. What I got instead was something else entirely. The rules were written plainly in the same bureaucratic language as any other procedural document. But the content, some of it was deeply, fundamentally wrong for a normal building. Do not say a body's name out loud unless it is in an active case file. If you hear knocking from inside a drawer, do not open it. Check the tag first. If the hallway intercom plays static, do not answer. Turn it off and wait until it stops. If a toe tag is missing, do not touch the sheet, call me. If you see water on the floor near the drains, step over it, do not mop it. I read through them twice, then looked up at Gerald with what I hoped was a skeptical smile. A nervous laugh escaped before I could stop it. "Is this some kind of initiation thing? Scare the new guy?" Gerald didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. His expression remained flat, professional, tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. "This place is not haunted," he said quietly. "It's worse. It's busy." He let that sit for a moment, then added, "You follow those rules, you'll be fine. You ignore them because you think you know better, but you'll learn why they exist. And I'd rather you didn't learn that way. He handed me his personal cell number on a slip of paper, told me to call if anything felt off, and left through the security door that led to the main building. I heard his footsteps echo down the empty hallway, then the distant clunk of the exterior door closing, and then I was alone. The refrigeration units hummed, the lights buzzed, the ventilation system exhaled slowly like the building itself was settling in for the night. I looked down at the laminated rule sheet again, reading the words that didn't make sense, trying to tell myself they were just superstitions. Old wives' tales passed down by people who worked too many quiet hours in a place that dealt with death every single day. But Gerald's voice stayed with me. Calm, certain, tired. It's not haunted. It's busy. I clipped the rules to the front of my notebook within easy view and tried to convince myself I wouldn't need them. The night stretched ahead, fluorescent and humming, and I began my first walkthrough of the cold rooms, telling myself it was just a job. Just a job. The first few hours passed in a kind of mechanical routine. I filed the intake logs from the previous shift, cross-referencing case numbers with the master log to ensure nothing was missing. I inventoried the cleaning supplies, restocked gloves and disinfectant, and ran a maintenance check on the equipment: gurneys, scales, the autoclave, and the eye wash station. Everything functioned exactly as it should. The building remained quiet, oppressively so, but quiet in the way I expected. Empty hallways, humming refrigeration, the occasional tick of pipes expanding or contracting behind the walls. I did a walkthrough of the cold storage area just after 11, moving through the rows of stainless steel drawer units with my checklist clipboard. Each drawer had a small label slot and a temperature readout. I checked tags, confirmed numbers matched the log, and ensured seals were intact. Everything was in order. The bodies inside were categorized, logged, and sealed. Completed paperwork. Finished business. The refrigeration units produced a constant low hum, a mechanical heartbeat that you stopped noticing after a while. It became the baseline. The silence beneath it felt heavier than it should, like the air itself was denser in this part of the building. Close to midnight, the intake buzzer rang. The sound cut through the quiet like a blade, two sharp electronic pulses. I startled despite expecting it eventually. This was a morgue, after all. Bodies arrived at all hours. I buzzed the delivery entrance open and met the ambulance crew in the intake bay. 2 EMTs, both young, both tired. Routine delivery. They wheeled in a black body bag on a standard transport gurney, handed me a clipboard with minimal paperwork, and exchanged maybe a dozen words total. The intake form said unidentified male, approximate age 40-50, found unresponsive, pronounced at scene. No next of kin, no identification, pending investigation. They looked eager to leave. I didn't blame them. It was late, and they'd probably been running calls for 12 hours straight. I signed for the transfer, and they left without ceremony. The exterior door thumped shut behind them, the lock engaging automatically. I was alone with the gurney. I wheeled it into the intake area, positioning it under the overhead light. The body bag was zipped fully, the plastic stiff and cold to the touch. The gurney felt heavier than it should. Not just weight, something else. Presence. The kind of feeling you get when someone is standing too close behind you, even though you're alone in the room. I told myself it was nerves. First night, first solo intake. Perfectly normal to feel off balance. Gerald's rules sat on the desk, the laminated sheet catching the light. One of them surfaced in my mind unbidden. Do not say a body's name out loud unless it is in an active case file. I looked down at the intake form. Unidentified. No name to say. That should have been reassuring. I unzipped the bag just enough to confirm tag placement, standard procedure. The morgue required visual confirmation that the toe tag matched the intake paperwork before a body could be transferred to cold storage. The zipper's teeth parted with a soft hiss. I pulled the opening down, exposing the upper torso and head. The face was turned slightly to the left, angled toward me. The skin had the waxy, slack quality of early post-mortem. But the eyes were open, not wide open, just barely open, a sliver of sclera visible beneath the lids like someone had fallen asleep and forgotten to close them all the way. I froze. Post-mortem eye-opening wasn't unusual. Muscles relax, eyelids don't always stay shut. I knew that, intellectually. But knowing it and seeing it are different things, especially when you're alone at midnight and the face is staring in your general direction with that thin, unblinking gaze. I reached for the intake phone to call Gerald, not because of the eyes, just to confirm the next step. But before my hand touched the receiver, the intercom on the wall crackled to life. Static, loud, abrupt, filling the small room. I stepped back instinctively, my heart kicking against my ribs. The intercom was the kind of old system that required you to press a button to transmit. It shouldn't activate on its own. But the static kept going, a wash of white noise that felt too thick, too present, like it was coming from somewhere closer than the speaker. I remembered the rules. If the hallway intercom plays static, do not answer. Turn it off and wait until it stops. My hand hovered over the intercom panel. Every instinct told me to press the button, to respond, to ask if anyone was there. That's what you do when a communication system activates. You answer, but the rule said not to. I reached for the power switch instead and flipped it off. The static stopped immediately. Silence rushed back in, thick and cold. I stood there, breathing too fast, staring at the dead intercom panel. Then faintly, so faintly I almost convinced myself I imagined it, the static continued, not from the speaker, deeper, like it had moved into the walls themselves, traveling through the bones of the building. I turned back to the body. The eyes were still open, that thin sliver of white catching the overhead light. I felt it then for the first time. The rules were not written to prevent mistakes. They were written to guide responses. This building was expected to have certain things, and if you gave it the wrong answer, it would teach you why the rules existed. I zipped the body bag back up, hands shaking slightly, and transferred the gurney to cold storage without saying a word. The drawer slid shut with a heavy metallic click. The refrigeration units hummed, and somewhere deep in the walls, something that sounded like static breathed in slow, patient cycles. I thought I'd have the whole night to myself, but around 1:30 in the morning, the security door beeped, and a man I didn't recognize walked into the morgue hallway carrying a maintenance clipboard and wearing a county janitorial uniform. His name was Kyle, mid-20s, eager smile, the kind of guy who fills silence with chatter because quiet makes him uncomfortable. He introduced himself as the late-night custodial tech for the administration building, said he was supposed to do a quick sweep of the morgue wing, mop the intake area, empty trash, check the restrooms. I didn't mind the company, honestly. The building felt less oppressive with another person in it. Kyle worked quickly and efficiently, talking the whole time. He asked how I liked the job so far, joked about how creepy the building got after hours, and mentioned he'd been working this shift for 8 months and still got jumpy sometimes when the HVAC kicked on unexpectedly. He spotted the laminated rule sheet on my desk and laughed. "Oh man, they gave you the rules," he said, picking up the clipboard like it was a prop from a haunted house. "That's some horror movie shit right there. Don't open the drawer if you hear knocking. Jesus, who comes up with this stuff?" I tried to smile, but it felt thin. Gerald seemed pretty serious about them. Kyle waved a hand dismissively. "Gerald's been here forever. Old-timers get superstitious. It's just bodies, man. Dead people don't do anything. They're not gonna jump out at you." He set the clipboard down, still grinning. "I'm not scared of bodies. I've been in here a dozen times. It's just a cold room." Something about the way he said it made my skin prickle. not scared, overconfident, the kind of confidence that invites testing. He finished mopping the intake area and asked if I needed anything else before he moved on to the next wing. I said no, but he lingered, glancing toward the cold storage door like he was curious. "You ever hear any of that knocking stuff?" he asked. "The drawer thing?" I shook my head. "It's my first night." Right. He hesitated, then grinned again, sharper this time. "Mind if I take a quick look? I've never actually seen the cold storage setup, just curious." I should have said no. I should have told him it wasn't part of his job, that he didn't have clearance. But I was new and he'd been here longer, and I didn't want to come across as paranoid or rude. So I unlocked the cold storage door and let him in. The room was exactly as I'd left it. Rows of stainless steel drawer units, each labeled with a number and a temperature gauge. The refrigeration hum was louder in here, a constant drone that made it hard to think clearly. Kyle walked down the center aisle, looking around with exaggerated fascination. Wild. It's like a library for dead people. I stayed near the door, uneasy in a way I couldn't articulate. He stopped near the middle of the room, head tilted, listening. Then I heard it too. 3 soft knocks. Pause. 3 more knocks, coming from inside one of the drawers. Kyle turned to look at me, eyebrows raised. "You hear that?" I nodded, my mouth dry. The rule surfaced in my mind, clear and cold. If you hear knocking from inside a drawer, do not open it. Check the tag first. "Probably just the cooling system," I said quickly. Metal expanding and contracting. Kyle smirked. "That's not the cooling system, man. That's somebody knocking. Don't..." But he was already moving toward the drawer, hands reaching for the handle. "Kyle, wait. Check the tag first." He glanced at the label slot. Empty. No tag visible. He should have stopped. The rule said to check the tag first. If there was no tag, you didn't proceed. You called the supervisor, but Kyle was grinning now, playing into the haunted house vibe, treating it like a game. "Let's see what's making noise," he said and pulled the handle. The drawer slid open smoothly, gliding on well-oiled rails. Inside was a body under a white sheet, standard positioning, head toward the back. The toe tag was turned inward, tucked against the ankle, hidden from view. Kyle laughed, a short, nervous sound. "See? Just a body, nothing." He stopped mid-sentence. His hand, halfway to lifting the sheet corner, froze in place. I couldn't see his face clearly from where I stood, but I saw his posture change. His shoulders hunched, his breathing quickened. "Kyle." He didn't respond. Very slowly, he lifted the edge of the sheet just enough to see the face underneath. For 3 long seconds, he didn't move. Then he whispered one word. A name. I didn't catch it clearly, but it was a name. His voice carried recognition, familiarity, and confusion. The hallway lights flickered. The refrigeration hum dipped lower, a grinding mechanical groan that vibrated through the floor. Kyle stumbled backward, his face drained of all color, his eyes too wide. "That's..." His voice cracked. "That's me." I stepped forward, instinct overriding fear. "What?" "That's me," he said again, louder, shaking. "That face, that's my face, that's..." He reached up and touched his own cheek, like he was checking if he was still real. I moved closer and glanced into the open drawer, but Kyle blocked most of my view. I caught a glimpse of pale skin, a slackened jaw, features that might have resembled Kyle's. But in the dim, cold storage lighting, everything looked distorted. "It's not you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's a body. You're standing here. You're fine." But Kyle wasn't listening. He backed away from the drawer, shaking, his head, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. "I shouldn't have seen that. I shouldn't have..." The drawer slammed shut on its own. No wind, no mechanism failure. It just slammed, hard and fast, the metallic clang echoing through the cold storage room like a gunshot. Kyle flinched so hard he nearly fell. The lights stabilized. The refrigeration hum returned to its normal pitch. But the air felt different now, thicker, attentive. I realized what had happened, what the rule was trying to prevent. Kyle hadn't just opened a drawer. He'd recognized something. He'd spoken a name, maybe not out loud, but internally, in that moment of shock. He'd given the building something it wanted, identification. Kyle left the cold storage room without another word, moving fast, his maintenance clipboard forgotten on the floor. I heard him exit through the security door, his footsteps echoing down the empty hallway, running. I stood alone in the cold storage room, staring at the closed drawer, the one that should have had a tag but didn't. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly, and I understood with creeping certainty that the rules weren't paranoia, they were survival instructions. I spent the next hour trying to restore normalcy through routine. I cleaned the equipment Kyle had left scattered, refiled intake logs, and double-checked seals on the specimen freezer. I avoided the cold storage room. Every time I glanced toward that door, my chest tightened. But avoidance wasn't part of my job. At 3 a.m., I had to do the scheduled cold storage check, a simple walkthrough to ensure all drawer temperature readouts were stable and all tags were legible and correctly placed. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, clipboard in hand, moving methodically down the rows. Most drawers were fine, numbers matched the log, tags were intact, temperatures held steady between 36 and 40 degrees. Then I reached drawer 14C. The temperature gauge read normal, but the label slot where the toe tag information should be visible through a small window was empty. I stopped, pen hovering over my checklist. The rule came back immediately. If a toe tag is missing, do not touch the sheet. Call me. I pulled out my phone and dialed Gerald's number. It rang longer than it should have. 7, 8, 9 rings. And I was about to hang up when he finally answered. Yes. His voice was alert, awake, like he'd been expecting the call. It's me. There's a drawer with a missing toe tag, 14C. Silence on the line. Not empty silence, thinking in silence. Did you touch the sheet? He asked. No. Good. Step away from the drawer, go back to the intake desk and wait. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Should I? No. Don't do anything. Just wait. He hung up. I left the cold storage room, locked the door behind me, and sat at the intake desk, staring at the phone, my heart beating too fast for someone who just followed instructions correctly. While I waited, my eyes drifted to a tall filing cabinet in the corner of the office, partially hidden behind a coat rack. It was labeled in faded lettering, Archived Incidents. I'd noticed it during the initial tour but hadn't thought much of it. Now, with 20 minutes to kill and adrenaline making me restless, I stood and opened the top drawer. Inside were dozens of manila folders organized by year, each containing incident reports written in the same clinical bureaucratic language as the intake forms. I pulled one at random, dated 4 years ago, and started reading. The report was titled Clerical Loop Event, Drawer 09A. It described an incident where a night shift worker had discovered a body with 2 toe tags, both bearing the same case number but different names. When the worker attempted to remove the duplicate tag to correct the error, both tags vanished. The drawer became non-responsive to standard procedures. It wouldn't open, wouldn't register on the temperature monitoring system, and produced auditory anomalies described as repetitive speech patterns in an unidentified male voice. The report concluded with the drawer being sealed and decommissioned. No explanation, just unit removed from active rotation. I pulled another folder. Another incident. This one described a body that responded to verbal identification by a staff member who had mistakenly said the deceased's name aloud while reviewing intake paperwork. The report mentioned duplicate entries appearing in the database and subject vocal activity despite confirmed medical death. The language was so dry, so procedural. It took me a moment to understand what it was actually describing. A dead body that started responding after someone said its name. I kept reading. Folder after folder, incident after incident. Always written in sterile clinical terms, but the fear underneath was unmistakable. Phrases like clerical loop, unauthorized vocal response, subjects appearing in drawers not assigned, and one recurring line that made my skin crawl. The building attempts to complete records. One report dated 7 years ago included a handwritten note paperclipped to the front. The handwriting was shaky, hurried. It doesn't want chaos, it wants order, it wants names, numbers, categories. It wants everything filed correctly, and if we don't give it the right information, it makes its own corrections. Using us. The note wasn't signed. I closed the folder and put it back, my hands trembling slightly. Gerald had been right. This place wasn't haunted. Hauntings were random, emotional, and tied to trauma or unfinished business. This was something else. This was a system, a process, a need for completion. The morgue collected more than bodies. It collected endings. And unfinished endings. Unidentified bodies missing. Tags, unclear records. Felt like open wounds to it. Gaps it needed to close. The rules made sense now. They weren't about avoiding ghosts. They were about denying the building what it wanted. Certainty, confirmation, participation. The security door beeped. Gerald walked in, moving quickly despite the hour, carrying a canvas tool bag. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Show me." I led him to cold storage. He unlocked the door and went directly to drawer 14C, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. He opened the drawer without hesitation. Inside was a body under a sheet, no toe tag visible. Gerald reached into his tool bag and pulled out a fresh tag, pre-printed with a generic case number, something like Hold Temp X, and attached it to the body's ankle without lifting the sheet. He closed the drawer, locked it with a key I didn't know existed, and marked something in a small notebook. "This drawer is out of rotation now," he said. "Don't open it. Don't log it. It doesn't exist until I say otherwise." "What happened to the original tag?" "It didn't go missing," Gerald said quietly. "It was never there. The body was filed incorrectly. Incomplete intake. And when that happens, the building tries to finish the paperwork." He looked at me, his expression tired, serious. "The morgue wants tidy records. It wants names in the right boxes, numbers on the right tags, bodies in the right drawers. And if you give it what it wants, if you confirm something, if you speak a name, if you acknowledge what it's showing you, it will lock that information in. Permanently." He zipped up his tool bag and handed me a slip of paper with a new rule written in careful block letters. "If you hear your own voice call you from a cold room, do not answer. That is not you." He met my eyes. "You can do your job here, but you cannot give it help." Then he left, locking the cold storage door behind him. I sat at the intake desk, staring at the new rule, and wondered how many other rules existed that weren't written down. How many lessons had been learned the hard way. Gerald didn't leave immediately after securing drawer 14C. Instead, he sat down at the intake desk across from me, moving with the deliberate slowness of someone deciding how much truth to share. He looked older under the fluorescent lights, more worn. "You're doing fine," he said, which surprised me. "You followed the rules. That's more than most people manage on their first night." "Kyle didn't," I said. Gerald nodded. Kyle broke the first rule within 5 minutes of being in here. He opened a drawer after hearing knocking without checking the tag first, and worse, he recognized what he saw. Gave it confirmation. He rubbed his face, sighing. He'll be okay. Shaken, but okay. The building got what it wanted from him. A moment of identification. It'll leave him alone now. What did he see? Himself, Gerald said simply. Or a version of himself. The building shows you what will make you react, what will make you speak, confirm, or acknowledge. It's very good at finding the thing you can't ignore. I thought about the body with open eyes, the static in the intercom, the way the drawer had slammed shut on its own. You said the building wants to complete records, I said. What does that mean? Gerald leaned back in his chair, considering his words carefully. About 9 years ago, the county did a renovation, expanded the cold storage capacity, updated the drainage system, and replaced the old refrigeration units with industrial-grade equipment. It was a good upgrade, necessary. But after the work was finished, things started happening. He gestured around the room, encompassing the whole morgue. Certain nights became louder, not with sound, with presence. Bodies that came in unidentified stayed unidentified longer than they should. Tags went missing, records duplicated, and staff started reporting experiences. Like what? Voices, reflections that didn't match, drawers opening on their own, and the worst one, people hearing themselves, their own voice calling from the cold room, asking them to come inside, to check something, to verify a name. He pulled a small keychain from his pocket, the kind that holds a locker key, and set it on the desk between us. One of my predecessors responded to his own voice. Went into the cold storage room to check on something, he heard himself say. They found him 3 hours later, standing in front of an open drawer, staring at a body. He couldn't speak, couldn't move, just stood there, frozen, until they physically pulled him out. What happened to him? He quit the next day, wouldn't talk about it, moved out of state within the week. Gerald pocketed the keychain again. But before he left, he wrote down the first rules. The ones you have now. And every person who's worked nights here since has added to them, refined them, learned new boundaries. Why does it happen? I asked. Well, what is it? Gerald shook his head. I don't know if it's something that moved in during the renovation, or if it was always here and the new construction just woke it up. But I know what it does. It collects unfinished things, unidentified bodies, missing information, clerical errors. Those feel like gaps to it, open questions, and it will try to close them using whatever resources it has available. Us. Yes, it will try to get you to confirm things, to say names, to acknowledge what you see, because once you do that, once you give it verbal or written confirmation, it can file that information, lock it in, make it permanent. He stood, picking up his tool bag. The rules exist to deny it that confirmation, to keep you from participating in its process. You don't say names. You don't open drawers without checking. You don't answer the intercom. You don't engage with anything that asks you to verify, identify, or confirm. He looked at me seriously. You're not a morgue attendant when you work nights here. You're a records clerk in a place that desperately wants its paperwork completed, and your only job is to not finish the paperwork. He walked to the door, then paused. One more thing, he said, his voice quieter. If you ever hear your own voice in this building calling your name, asking you to do something, mimicking something you said, do not respond, do not investigate. That is not you. That is the building trying to create a file with your name on it. He left through the security door, and I heard his footsteps echo down the empty hallway until the exterior door closed with a heavy thunk. I sat alone in the intake area, the refrigeration units humming steadily, and looked down at the laminated rule sheet. They weren't arbitrary. They weren't superstitions. They were a defense against something that wanted us categorized, filed, and stored as neatly as the bodies in the drawers. I checked the clock. 4:17 a.m. 3 more hours until the morning shift. I told myself I could make it. I told myself the rules would be enough. The rest of the shift should have been quiet. I had my tasks: finish the cold storage log, clean the intake area, and prepare the handoff report for the morning team. Simple procedural work, the kind that keeps your hands busy and your mind occupied. But at 5:30 in the morning, just as the sky outside was beginning to lighten from black to deep gray, I heard crying. Not loud, wailing grief, soft, controlled crying. The sound of someone trying very hard not to be heard. It came from the hallway outside the intake area near the cold storage entrance. I stood from the desk, every instinct telling me to investigate. Crying meant someone was in distress, someone needed help. I stepped into the hallway. The fluorescent lights were dimmer here, half of them flickering in lazy, uneven rhythms. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and something else, something cold and stale, like old flowers left too long in a closed room. At the far end of the corridor, near the door that led to the cold storage room, a woman stood with her back partially turned to me. She was middle-aged, maybe 50, wearing a dark coat and holding a purse clutched tightly against her chest. Her shoulders shook slightly, and I could see her hand lifting occasionally to wipe her face. She looked exactly like a grieving family member who had gotten lost in the building. "Ma'am," I called softly, moving toward her. "Are you okay?" She turned at the sound of my voice, and her face was streaked with tears. Red eyes, trembling mouth, the kind of raw sorrow that comes from fresh, unbearable loss. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. They told me I could see him, but I can't find the right room. I can't." She pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. Every professional instinct kicked in. Help her, guide her, call security, find out who authorized a family visit at this hour. But something stopped me. Visitors didn't come to the morgue at 5:30 in the morning. Viewings were scheduled during business hours in a separate area with staff present. There was no reason for anyone to be in this hallway, alone, unsupervised. And the rules never mentioned visitors at night. That absence felt like a warning all by itself. The woman took a step closer, her expression softening with desperation. "Please," she said, "I just want to see him, just for a moment. Just to say goodbye." "I'm sorry," I said carefully, keeping my distance. "Family viewings have to be arranged through the main office. I can give you the contact information." "I already arranged it," she interrupted, her voice gaining an edge of urgency. "They said I could come. They said someone would be here to help me." "Who told you that?" She hesitated, her gaze flickering briefly toward the cold storage door. "The man on the phone. He said I could see him tonight. He said it would be easier this way. Quieter." Her answers were too vague, too convenient. "I'm going to need to verify that," I said, pulling out my phone. "What's the case number?" The woman's face shifted. The tears stopped just for a second, like someone had flipped a switch. "I don't have the number," she said. "But I know his name. If you just tell me where he is, I can—" "Ma'am, I can't release that information without proper authorization." She stepped closer, and the temperature in the hallway seemed to drop. Not dramatically, just enough to notice, just enough to make my breath catch. "Please," she said, and her voice was softer now, almost gentle, almost kind. "Can you just tell me his name? I need to hear it. I need to know he's here." And there it was, the ask, the confirmation, the thing the building wanted. Do not say a body's name out loud unless it is in an active case file. I took a step back, my pulse quickening. "I can't help you without the proper paperwork. I'm sorry." The woman smiled. It was a small smile, sad and understanding, and it should have been comforting. but the crying had stopped completely. Her face was dry now. No tears, no redness. "That's fine," she said quietly. "I already know yours." The hallway air turned colder. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder, a rising hum that pressed against my ears. The woman's smile didn't change, but her eyes did. They became too still, too focused, like something looking through a mask. I backed toward the intake area, moving slowly, trying not to run, trying not to give her whatever reaction it wanted. "You should go," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I will," she said, "but you'll hear from me again." She turned and walked down the hallway, away from me, her footsteps making no sound at all on the tile floor. She reached the end of the corridor where it branched toward the administrative wing and stepped around the corner. I waited, counted to 10. Then I walked to the corner and looked. The hallway was empty, no woman, no footsteps, no doors opening or closing. Just empty fluorescent space and the hum of ventilation. I returned to the intake desk, locked the hallway door behind me and sat down, my hands trembling. The building had tested me. It had offered me the easiest door, kindness, help someone in distress, confirm a name, give comfort to the grieving. And if I'd said a name out loud, even to help, the building would have had what it wanted. I looked at the laminated rules, my eyes finding the one Gerald had added by hand. "If you hear your own voice call you from a cold room, do not answer. That is not you." The woman had known my name. I hadn't told it to her, which meant the building already had my information. It was just waiting for me to finish the paperwork. At 6 a.m., the morning shift was supposed to arrive in 1 hour. I just had to hold on, finish the log, clean the workspace, hand off the night report. Simple tasks, manageable tasks. But the computer system had other plans. I sat down at the intake terminal to file the final shift report, and the screen flickered. Not a normal flicker. A deliberate one, like something was pushing through the display. A new window opened on its own. It was a case file entry form, the kind we used for logging new intakes. But I hadn't opened it. I hadn't touched anything. The fields were mostly blank except for one section at the top. Case type, unidentified. The cursor blinked in the name field, waiting. I moved the mouse to close the window. It reopened immediately, overlaying everything else. I tried again. It reopened faster. The cursor remained in the name field, blinking steadily, patient, expectant. I pushed back from the desk, breathing too fast. Then the hallway intercom crackled to life. Static, loud and thick, filling the intake area. I'd turned it off hours ago. I'd left it off. But now it was active again, the static carrying something underneath. Words, faint, distorted, like someone speaking through water. I couldn't make out the words, but I recognized the rhythm, the cadence. It sounded like my own voice. I walked to the intercom panel and flipped the power switch off. The static stopped for exactly 3 seconds. Then it returned, quieter now, but continuous. Not from the speaker. From deeper in the walls, from the ventilation, from the space between things. I heard my name underneath it, spoken softly, carefully, like someone reading from a document. "If you hear your own voice call you from a cold room, do not answer. That is not you." I moved away from intercom, backing toward the intake desk, and the computer screen flickered again. The case file was still open. The cursor is still blinking. But now text had appeared in the notes section, typing itself one letter at a time. Subject present awaiting identification. My chest tightened. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to think clearly. The building was escalating. It wasn't waiting anymore. It was actively trying to get me to participate, to type a name, to confirm something. To finish the file that it had started, I shut down the computer. The screen went black. For 5 seconds, I thought it had worked. Then the monitor turned back on by itself, the case file still open, the cursor still blinking. I unplugged the computer from the wall. The screen stayed on. I stepped back, pulse hammering. The cold storage door rattled, not violently, just enough to make it clear something was testing the lock. Then I heard it, drawers sliding open one after another, slow and methodical. The sound of metal rails gliding smoothly, then stopping. Then another drawer opening, then another. I moved toward the cold storage door, not because I wanted to, but because I had to know. Through the small reinforced window in the door, I could see inside. Every drawer in the first row was open. Just a few inches, not fully extended. Just open enough to show the white sheets inside, the edges of bodies beneath them. And on the floor, near the drainage grates, water had pooled. If you see water on the floor near the drain, step over it. Do not mop it. The water was still, reflecting the overhead lights. But the reflection was wrong. In the reflection, the lights flickered. In reality, they didn't. In the reflection, the drawers were fully open. In reality, they were only cracked. I stared at the water, and the reflection stared back. Then, from the surface of the pooled water, I heard my own voice, soft, clear, calm. It spoke my full name. First, middle, last, slowly, carefully, like someone filling out a form, like someone reading from a toe tag. I stepped back from the door, my breath catching. The building wasn't haunting me. It was trying to file me. It wanted me categorized, named, confirmed. It wanted my information locked into its system the same way it locked bodies into drawers. And it was running out of patience. The computer screen flickered again, and new text appeared in the case file. Final confirmation required. The cursor blinked, waiting. At 6:15, with 45 minutes left before the morning shift arrived, the security door beeped. Kyle stumbled back into the morgue hallway. He looked worse than when he'd left. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed and wide, and his movements were jerky, uncoordinated. He wasn't wearing his janitorial uniform anymore. Just a plain t-shirt and jeans, like he'd gone home, tried to sleep, and couldn't. "I need to see it again," he said, his voice hoarse. "Need to see the drawer." I stood quickly, positioning myself between him and the cold storage door. "Kyle, you need to leave. You're not supposed to be here." "I can't stop thinking about it," he said, not really listening. "I saw my own face, I know I did. But that doesn't make sense, it's impossible, so I need to check again. I need to prove it wasn't real." "It wasn't real," I said, trying to sound firm. "It was a trick. The building, I just need to look," he interrupted, his voice rising. "I need to open the drawer and see that it's not me. That's just a body. Just a random dead person who happened to look like me for a second because the lighting was weird or I was tired or..." He was spiraling, caught in a loop of rationalization that wouldn't resolve because the thing he'd seen didn't follow rational rules. "Kyle, listen to me. You can't go back in there." "Why not?" He laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "What's it going to do? Kill me? I'm already going insane. I haven't slept. I keep hearing my own voice in my apartment calling me from the other room. I need to see the drawer. I need closure." He tried to push past me. I grabbed his arm. "If you go back in there, if you open that drawer again, it's going to get worse. Trust me." He yanked his arm free, his eyes wild. "You don't understand. It's me in there. I know it is. And if I can just see it one more time, if I can just confirm it, then I'll know I'm not crazy." That word, confirm. That's what the building wanted. Kyle moved toward the cold storage door, and I realized I couldn't physically stop him. He was stronger, more desperate, and I didn't have the authority to restrain him. I followed him inside, hoping I could at least prevent the worst. The cold storage room was exactly as I'd left it earlier. Drawers slightly ajar, water pooled near the drains, the air thick with refrigeration hum. Kyle went directly to the drawer he'd opened before. the one with no visible tag. He stood in front of it, his hand hovering over the handle, shaking. "I just need to see," he whispered. "Kyle, check the tag first," I said urgently. "Check the tag, that's the rule." He glanced at the label slot, still empty, no tag. But he didn't care anymore. Rules didn't matter when you were this far gone. He pulled the handle. The drawer slid open smoothly, almost eagerly. Inside was the same body, the same white sheet, the same positioning. But now the toe tag was visible, turned outward, hanging from the ankle. It was blank. No case number, no name. Just a clean white tag waiting to be filled in. Kyle stared at it, his breathing shallow. "It's blank," he said. "Why is it blank?" I saw it then, the trap closing. The building had left the tag blank because it wanted Kyle to fill it in. It wanted him to say his name, to confirm his identity, to give it the final piece of information it needed to complete the record. "Kyle, step back," I said. "Don't touch it, don't say anything." But Kyle was leaning over the drawer now, his hand reaching toward the sheet. "I need to see the face again," he said. "I need to know." He lifted the edge of the sheet. I couldn't see what he saw from where I stood, but I saw his reaction. His face went slack, his eyes glazed, his mouth opened slightly, and for a moment he looked like he was staring at something infinitely far away. Then he whispered his own name, his full name, first, middle, last, slowly, clearly, like he was filling out a form. The drawer slammed shut. The sound was deafening, a metallic crash that echoed through the entire cold storage room. Kyle stumbled backward, gasping, and I caught him before he fell. "What did I—" He looked at me, his eyes wild with confusion. "What did I just say?" "Your name," I said quietly. "You said your name." He touched his face, again frantic, checking if he was still real, still present. "I'm here," he said, more to himself than to me. "I'm still here. I'm still—" The intercom crackled to life, and through the static, clear and calm and unmistakable, I heard my own voice. "Name confirmed." Kyle's legs gave out. He collapsed against the wall, shaking, tears streaming down his face. I pulled him to his feet and dragged him out of the cold storage room, locking the door behind us. The lights in the hallway flickered once, then stabilized. The static faded. The building had what it wanted, not me. Kyle. But I knew with cold certainty that I was next. At 7 a.m., the morning shift arrived. 2 mortuary techs and an administrative assistant walked through the security door, carrying coffee and talking in the easy, tired tones of people starting another routine workday. The fluorescent lights felt less hostile with other people in the building. The hum of refrigeration became background, noise again. The hallways looked normal, just a county morgue, institutional and mundane. But my nerves didn't relax. Gerald came in 5 minutes later, moving directly to the intake desk where I stood finishing my handoff report. He didn't greet the morning staff. He came straight to me. "How was the night?" he asked, his voice low. "Complicated," I said. His eyes sharpened. "Did you say any names?" I hesitated. "No, but Kyle did." Gerald's expression didn't change, but something in his posture tightened. "His own?" "Yes." He closed his eyes briefly, exhaling through his nose. "Is he still here?" I gestured toward the break room where Kyle sat on a folding chair, staring at the floor, hands clasped between his knees. He hadn't spoken since we left the cold storage room. He just sat, silent and shaking, like someone coming down from shock. Gerald walked over to him, crouched down to eye level, and spoke quietly. I couldn't hear the words, but Kyle nodded occasionally, his face blank. After a few minutes, Gerald stood and made a phone call. 10 minutes later, a county supervisor arrived and escorted Kyle out of the building, one hand on his shoulder, guiding him like a patient. Kyle didn't look at me as he left. Gerald returned to the intake desk and pulled me aside, away from the morning staff. "Kyle's going to be fine," he said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. "Shaken, disoriented, but he'll recover. The building got what it wanted from him, a full confirmation. It'll leave him alone now." "What will happen to him?" "Medical leave, psychological evaluation, standard procedure after a traumatic workplace incident." Gerald's tone was flat, bureaucratic. "He won't come back here. Most people don't." He looked at me seriously. "Did you follow the rules?" I tried. "That's not what I asked." I met his eyes. "Yes, I followed them." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. You did well. Better than most people do on their first night." But his expression didn't ease. If anything, it grew more cautious. "You need to understand something," he said quietly. "The building has your information now. It heard your voice, it knows your name. It's going to keep testing you. Not every night, but often enough, and it will try again." "Try what?" "To complete your file." He pulled out his notebook and wrote something down, tearing the page free and handing it to me. "If anything unusual happens outside of work, phone calls with static, reflections that don't match, hearing your own voice in your home, call me immediately. Do not engage with it. Do not try to rationalize it. Just call." I took the paper, my hand unsteady. Gerald squeezed my shoulder once, a brief gesture of solidarity, and then walked to the cold storage room to begin his own inspection. I finished the handoff paperwork, gathered my things, and left the building. The morning sun was bright, warm, ordinary. The parking lot smelled like dew and asphalt. Traffic hummed distantly on the county road. Everything was normal. I drove home, hands tight on the steering wheel, telling myself it was over. It was just one night. I followed the rules, I survived. But when I got home and unlocked my apartment door, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" Static. Thick, heavy static, just like the intercom. And underneath it, barely audible, a voice. My voice. It spoke my full name. First, middle, last, slowly, carefully, like someone reading from a toe tag. I hung up immediately, my heart hammering. I walked to the bathroom, needing to splash cold water on my face, needing to ground myself in something real. I turned on the light and looked at my reflection in the mirror. For a moment, everything was fine. Then my reflection smiled. Just a small smile. Slight, barely noticeable, but I wasn't smiling. I stepped back, my breath catching. My reflection held the smile for one more second, watching me, and then it matched my expression perfectly, falling back into sync. But it had been delayed. Just a half second too late. I turned off the light, left the bathroom, and sat on my couch in the quiet, ordinary daylight of my apartment. My phone sat on the table, dark and silent. But I knew it would ring again. The building had my name now, and it was very, very patient.